Most of the time it's very, very hot. But sometimes when it rains, oh, it rains. And we had an experience, we came in for lunch. We had it inside that day. We had gone and grabbed it at a restaurant really quickly, and it had started to rain, and okay, that's whatever. It was pretty heavy, but it's always heavy. Then as soon as we looked outside, the streets were completely flooded. And I mean, like, some people, the section that was just a couple streets over was so flooded, like people were trying to drive a car in it, and if they had kept going, the car would have been almost completely submerged in the street. So, flash flooding is the thing. It's very important that you be very careful, especially if you're in the center of town, like you're on a P day and it's raining or stuff. Well, like buses get stranded out there sometimes. And so sometimes, most of the time it'll be hot and everything, but when it rains, be aware, it can be very, very violent. Well, there's a thing that all Brazilian missionaries talk about, that they learn how to do this, right? But don't do it too much, because people say, oh, they do this in Brazil. They don't do this. All they do one, just one. In either they're saying, like in Fortaleza, they would say, oh, that tastes so good. And they'd wipe across their mouth, trying to show that it was so good that they are just slobbering all over themselves. Or saying that it's so hot outside. Oh, it's so hot. And they just do it once for emphasis. And so whenever if you see anyone going around like this on the street, it's an American missionary trying to learn how to do it. And he thinks he's all cool and everything. It's like, it's cool, but they don't do it a whole bunch. They just use it for emphasis. So other than learning Portuguese, I've never ironed my shirt so much in my entire life. And I'm very thankful now that I have shirts that you just put in the dryer and they automatically come out flat. But they didn't have dryers there. So I did learn how to hang clothes so that they'll dry, because that's the only way that they do it over there. Also, how to survive mentally while you have to take cold showers every day. That's a part of life there, and it becomes invigorating, more so in the morning because it's really cold then. But yeah, I was in the Brazil MTC, and so there's this American elder. And many of the Brazilian elders, bless their hearts, I love them. They're so funny, and they're also very energetic. They didn't like to go to bed at night very much. So many of them would stay up late. Don't do this. But they would run through the halls and make so much noise, and because they're excited, and some of them were leaving the next day, and oh, it was so exciting. But what happened was we had this American elder, very tall, very large. He was a football player. His name's Elder Hunsinger. I knew him. He was at my farewell by chance because his cousin was giving her homecoming that day. But he opened the door, and in very poor, broken Portuguese, he said, "No more, no mais, vai dormir." Which he said no more in English, but he's saying no more, no more. Then they switched to Portuguese, and he said, "Go sleep." And he was so exhausted. And he didn't even realize this until I told him after our missions. But we quoted that with the Brazilians and the Americans every single day after that in the MTC for like a month. It was the funniest thing ever. And so he was a celebrity, and he didn't even know it because he had left already. But it was so funny. And everybody, you just say, "No more, no more," everybody just busted up laughing. So sometimes, you know, he had a horrible accent back then, but it was the funniest thing ever, and it was very memorable. I actually asked to try this because I wanted to. They make something called buchada or panelada, depending on how it's made. But it's the bucho of a cow, which is the bottom folds of the stomach, right before you get into the intestines. And it's not very tasty at all. The taste is okay. The texture is bearable, but the smell, you just can't stand it. It's pretty bad. So some people really like it, but beware. I would say try it, but don't have that be the only thing that you eat during lunch because you won't eat very much. But yeah. I was privileged. I was never mugged per se. It does happen. Bon Jardim, sorry, if you get sent there, it's going to happen to you. I was never, and I was very thankful. They call it the area of Vish because, anyway, it's a kind of a phrase in Portuguese, like, oh, weird. But a guy did walk up to me, my companion. I was just talking. It was over before I even knew what was going on. Like, I swear he must have been high on something. But he came up and he said, "Oh, give me your watches right now." And my companion, who was a Brazilian, luckily, I didn't speak hardly anything. And he was like, "Oh man, what do you want? What are watches for? These aren't worth anything." He's like, "No, just give them to me." He's like, "Really? No, our watches aren't worth anything." And he's like, "They're not worth anything?" "No, they're not worth anything." He's like, "Oh, okay, well, sorry, good night." And he shook our hands and he left. And I was just like, what? So, yeah, you'll run into some crazy people. But I was lucky in that way, but other people have had way crazier stories too. So just be aware and keep your eyes open. You never know what's going to happen. How the Lord plans things, and sometimes He does almost all of it. You're just there. And we had looked in the area book, and we had seen someone who had been previously taught. And so we went to the house and talked to her. Her name was Zilmar. And she wasn't really interested, but like most people, if you set a return appointment, they'll take an appointment with you, whether they're actually going to be there or not. And the day that we ended up setting it for, we were on splits. In Portuguese we call them divisões or divisions. And that area, I was with a brand new elder. It was a very interesting day. So we were heading back because it was almost time for us to be in. And that whole section, we were walking down the road, and that whole section where the houses were, I was thinking of stopping by just to let him know, hey, how's it going? But to talk to him a little bit. But that whole section of the area, the electricity had gone out, so it was totally black. And so my first inclination was like, I don't know if I really want to go in there, and I don't know what's really going to happen. But I felt like, no, just go, and if at very least set another appointment. So we went in, we talked to him, and when we got there, Zilmar wasn't there, but her son-in-law was. His name is Allison, which is a guy's name in Brazil, and his wife wasn't there, but his wife's name is Raquel, and they have a little girl. And I talked to him and said that we wanted to come back later, and he said, "Okay, yeah, great." He was a great guy, whatever. And like we always do, we invite everybody to say, "Hey, have you seen the church? Do you know where the church is at?" He's like, "No, where's it at?" I said, "Oh, it's just right down the street." It was really lucky. It's easy. You just go right down there, and then it's the big one right there with the steeple. And he was like, "Okay, cool. What time is it at?" I said, "It's at 9. Like, come, and you'd be welcome. We'd love to see you there." He's like, "I'm going to come." Everybody says they're going to come. And so I was not expecting anything. And lo and behold, at Sunday, him and his wife came to church. And then we had a family history fireside that night, and they went to that too, and they loved it. And they started receiving the lessons, and it was incredible. I was like, man, these guys are perfect. They were married, which is an amazing thing. In Brazil, it's always okay, you guys are together, are you married? Please say. It's very rare, but sometimes like they're married. That's wonderful. And then they were baptized the Saturday before I left. So, and that was only in the course of about a month or so. And so, the Lord has people prepared, and sometimes you're like, I don't really want to go over there because that person's really actually not very interested, even though we marked, and they're probably not even going to be there. And what's going to happen? Oh, the electricity's out. I don't know. I could just go home now and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes instead of the Lord telling you very strongly, do this, go here, He just nudges you in the direction that you're already going. And tells you little things, and then miracles happen. And that's consistent throughout my whole mission.